I'm Mark Hall-Patton. I want to welcome you to the Clark County Museum. Today we're going to talk about something you might not normally think about. Obviously, when you come out to the museum, you see the engine that we have here. We have a lot of rolling stock here. But one of the things you don't often think about is, what do these things sit on? And that's the rail. Now, rail is important for railroads all across the United States, but there's a lot of different kinds of rails. And one of the things that we have here down in the Boulder City Depot is a display of the different kinds of rails that have been used throughout the state of Nevada. So let's take a look at those. Part of the way that we display the railroads is through the different rails that were used. Now, it's kind of a nice way of showing it, but you notice all these different sizes of rails. You might wonder, why the different sizes? Well, one of the big expenses of railroads is the rail that they have to use. Now, this is steel rail, and it's very expensive to have to put down all of this steel for the entire length of the railroad, and then you have to replace it as it wears out, and the rail does wear out as it's used over the length of time that the railroad is in use. Now, if you've got a very small railroad, say something like the Keene Wonder Mine or a little baby gauge railroad, you use a very small rail. You don't have to use one of these much larger rails because you're not carrying as much weight on that rail. So you use a much smaller rail. It doesn't cost as much. You can lay it down much easier. It's much easier to pick up at the end. Now, if you're using something where you're carrying a lot more weight, and a lot of these rails were carrying heavy freight. They were carrying ore, something like the Tonopah and Goldfield, the Las Vegas and Tonopah, the Tonopah and Tidewater. These were carrying heavy ore. The Virginian Truckee, which has been restarted now, you can now ride on the Virginian Truckee. That's been relayed. So as you're looking at these, you're seeing something about the kinds of railroads that they were, as well as just what railroads were here. And as you look at the map of the state, you can see where all of these different railroads were. Now, we don't have the Union Pacific in here, that's true. That one is still running through the southern part of the state. These were the railroads that were put in for specific purposes, a lot of which are gone now. One of the interesting ones, of course, is the Las Vegas and Tonopah. That ran from Las Vegas and it ran up to Tonopah, but that one was taken out right after World War I. 1919, they finally tore up the line, and what were they going to do with the roadbed? Well, they sold it to the state. That became Highway 95. That was the first highway running north out of Las Vegas, and we still use part of that for Highway 95 today. Now, what do you do with an old rail once it's no longer being used for a railroad? They melted them back down, recast them, and reused them for other rails elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in the world. Many of the rails that were used here were purchased not necessarily in the United States. Sometimes they were purchased in England and then brought over to the United States and laid here. So when you come out to the county museum, there's all kinds of things that you can learn about different parts of our history. This is just one part of it. Remember, when you come out here, it is hard to find us open. We are only open 7 days a week, 9 to 4:30. It is $2 to get in. I'm sorry, I know that's expensive, but do come out and see us. Now, if you are like me and over 55, it's only $1. Or if you're like, well, no, I can't claim to be under 18. But if you're under 18, it is only $1. So do come out and join us.